Hey Changemaker! Welcome to Learning for Good, the only podcast that teaches nonprofit leaders how to leverage training to drive performance, improve capacity, and fuel their mission impact. Do you ever feel like your nonprofit is growing, but your people just aren't keeping up? Or like you're fixing the same problems over and over? Do you wonder how to build confident, capable staff who know how to lead, not just execute? If we haven't met yet, I'm Heather, and I know how hard it can feel to get people to do what's expected of them. Trust me, I have 3 kids. I've tried telling people what to do and how. I've tried the traditional training approaches, and I realized that just doesn't work. And that's when I started researching what does work. Now, I help mission-driven leaders use learning to drive performance, build capacity, and make change that lasts. And I'm sharing it all on this podcast. So block your calendar, turn off your Teams or Slack chat, and let's dive in. It's Learning for Good.
I was traveling last week, and hotel room temperature is quite possibly the trickiest temperature. Am I right? It's freezing when you walk in, you adjust it slightly, and suddenly you are sweating. The thermometer is just off. Compare that to my smart thermostat at home. I set it, and as long as it recognizes that I'm home, it stays at the right temperature throughout the day. It's constantly adjusting itself to keep that temperature steady. Data can be that for learning and development. You collect the data, you create solutions to meet the needs that data reveals, and then you collect new data to check back in and you adjust. It's the cycle. And as you continue the cycle, you create an environment that is steadily improving. And that's exactly what nonprofit HR leader Wilson Kirkpatrick did for his organization. And I can't wait for him to share that with you today. Let's dive in. It's Learning for Good. Wilson Kirkpatrick is a senior human resources professional with deep experience leading people strategy in mission-driven and high-growth organizations. He currently serves as the Director of People Operations at Waterford.org, a national ed tech nonprofit focused on improving early childhood literacy, where he partners with executive leaders on organizational design, talent strategy, and culture during periods of growth and change. Wilson has built and scaled HR functions across nonprofit, SaaS, and consumer technology environments with particular strengths in executive advising, workforce transformation, and pragmatic people operation. Based in Salt Lake City, he brings a candid, business-minded perspective to conversations about leadership, work, and the evolving role of HR. If he is not in the office, you can often find him enjoying the Wasatch Mountains on his skis or mountain bike. Wilson, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. The last time we connected, we were talking more about coaching because that is an offer that you have created for Waterford.org, for staff there. And coaching is something that I know a lot of people care about. And so that might come up in our conversation today. But one of the things that stood out to me as we were talking about it was your use of data. And so I'm really excited to have that conversation with you because I think there is a little bit of a gap there sometimes with learning and development where things are hard to prove, they're hard to interpret, and so we just stay away sometimes from data, which is not always the right response. And so I'm excited for this conversation with you. So thank you again for jumping on with me today.
Absolutely, Heather. Excited to be here.
So before we get into the thrilling subject of data, tell us a little bit about your career journey. How did you get here? You've been in several different industries, but sounds like deep experience in nonprofit. So how did you get here today?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a first half and second half to my career. First half, I was really involved in talent acquisition. And so it's really opens your eyes to the HR world through the impact and visibility and some of the, working with a lot of the business units and being able to be familiar with not only the roles within it, but how they work together. And so that's a good start to an HR career, in my opinion, to be able to start there. The second half, I've been able to gradually take on more HR responsibilities from talent acquisition and move more into performance management, talent development, rewards and recognitions. and some of those transitions therein. You mentioned I'm now the Director of People Operations at Waterford.org, and I'm really looking to exact meaningful change here at Waterford.
Yeah, that's amazing. It sounds like career in HR, which is great. And you've just been able to slowly expand and take on new responsibilities and gain new skill sets over the course of your career, which is amazing. So tell us a little bit about Waterford.org as well. If people aren't familiar with the organization, what do you guys do? Mission, vision, what's your size? Maybe just paint us a little picture of your nonprofit.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, we're a nonprofit. We serve pre-K through second grade kids in reading, maths, and science programs, and really trying to serve them wherever they are learning. We're really trying to help them reach critical milestones by third grade. And so really just trying to lay that foundation for their future success. We've got a very strong NPS from the families that we serve at 97%. So we're really excited about that. We're about 200 employees strong across the US, and we've got a great dev team in Romania as well. So yeah, we're kind of everywhere.
Yeah, I love that. And for anybody who isn't familiar, NPS, Net Promoter Score, so amazing, 97% you said, that's such a high Net Promoter Score. So you are Director of People Operations within Waterford.org. And I know in that role, you've created a number of different talent initiatives, but one we spent time discussing was helping your people managers become coaches. I mentioned that earlier. You have a coaching program, and I'm sure that people are going to want to know more about that. But as I said, one of the things that intrigued me was your use of data in that process. You use data to identify the need, to create the solution, to validate the solution was working. And so I do want to spend time thinking through and talking through what that looks like for you. When you first reviewed, it came from employee engagement data, I believe. So when you first reviewed that employee engagement data, what stood out to you?
Yeah. So when it comes to employee engagement, we have a pretty simple formula. We're listening, we want to understand, and we want to act upon some of those results that come in. And in the HR world, you can sometimes get caught up in anecdotes or best practices, which, to be clear, I want to be very clear that those things are beneficial. But I've found most of the time to just get to the heart of the matter, just keep it simple and just ask. So we asked our employees to share their feedback. We're getting valuable insight into that employee experience, and we're able to return the favor by implementing programs and practices that were asked for. So in the spring of 2024, we had an engagement survey that revealed some negative sentiment related to leadership and psychological safety. And that was a major concern, as we want all of our employees to feel engaged. We want them to feel trusted. We want them to feel trust. And we want them to just really be able to do their best work. And so it's kind of that environment where if you're comfortable taking risks and making mistakes and you can learn from them with the support of your manager, you can really unlock that true potential as a professional.
So it was the leadership and the psychological safety data points that really stood out to you. How did you determine that those were things that was an area where you could really create change?
Yeah. So if we're going to hone in on the understand part of that formula that I mentioned earlier, which is listen, understand, and act, the understand portion is something that you need to be very intentional about. And so really digging into that data and determining which scores are concerning, what are standing out to you. So what we always try to do on the people operations team is to make a business case for all of the work that we're doing and linking it to improving the employee experience or making operations more efficient, which those two things can go hand in hand quite often. So we started by asking ourselves, what are the things that we can address in this data? What are the potential solutions that we could come up with just off the bat? Of those solutions, how deep would that impact be? And then what is the difficulty level of the implementation of that solution? And so marrying those two elements together of impact and difficulty level, that gives us the answer on which solutions would be best to implement and which to prioritize. So from those insights, we determined that coaching would really be a deeply impactful, challenging to implement, but very much worth investing in.
So that's how you arrived at coaching.
We didn't want to look at these scores in a vacuum. We considered some related and tertiary data that can help explain those scores. So using that kind of related data, we looked at coaching and said to ourselves, based off of that information, that coaching conversations may not be happening in real time, but not happening on time, or the effectiveness may not be there. We also were able to determine that the work being done by employees may not be directly tied to the investment in that employee and finding, how is coaching actually helping them improve not only in their performance, but also in their career development. And then we didn't necessarily have a blueprint or roadmap to help guide those conversations. And so we felt that could be deeply beneficial. So in essence, we were led to the coaching decision by the hypothesis that manager effectiveness will address concerns around leadership, but it would also lead to improvements in other areas, psychological safety, and in improving that relationship between manager and employee.
Do you wish you could connect with other nonprofit learning and development leaders? I know what it feels like to want someone to bounce ideas off of and to learn from, someone who really understands you and your work. Imagine if you could have a simple way to meet people in the field, ask questions, and share information. That's why I created the Nonprofit Learning and Development Collective, where nonprofit L&D, talent management, and DEI leaders can connect with each other quickly and easily in a virtual space. When you join this community, you will walk away with a new, diverse, and powerful network and a sounding board for your staff development needs. So if you're ready to exchange ideas and collaborate with your peers, come join the Nonprofit L&D Collective.
For context, and some people are probably most interested in this part, but for context, tell us a little bit about how you implemented coaching. So you went through the data, you figured out, here are the pain points, here is a solution that could potentially help resolve those pain points. How did you roll it out? How did you implement it with people managers across the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So we looked at this and we prioritized the quick wins. And so that's things that are, lower effort, but deep impact. So along with my team, we were able to put together kind of a calendar of one-on-one talking points. So what we mean by that is we're able to add to the agenda of all of our employees talking points around things like performance, around development, around having some of those conversations. And through this, we're able to not only employ best practices in the conversation, but it can also take some of that awkwardness out of the conversation, where if you add something to the agenda, it can be difficult to discuss. But if someone else has done it on your behalf, it takes away some of that pressure from the manager or the employee to have that critical conversation. And so by inserting that into the one-on-one agenda for each of our employees and their manager, they're able to have a more effective conversation without fear of any sort of backlash or anything like that. Secondly, we also started a drip campaign around coaching and professional development. Again, kind of in that low effort, deep impact category. We almost had to become marketers in a way, and we put together a social calendar and just came up with what are some best practices? How are we meeting people in the moment? Whether that's, hey, we have open enrollment coming up, or we have performance reviews coming up. So we were able to push some of that messaging out through our Slack channels and provide not only resources to help managers be more effective, but also have a little bit of fun with it and drive engagement and ask questions in a low stakes environment. So those are some of the quick wins that we have. We also had some more, I'd say it's started as difficult, but they had lasting impacts. Difficult meaning that they were challenging to implement. So we did finalize and publish an organizational competency matrix and job-specific competency matrix. And that's kind of that blueprint that I was talking about earlier, where you're able to not only define what does success look like, what are my expectations, but also helped us in our career pathing. And that helps guide the conversations and coaching, where you're able to say, here's what the expectations are. And if you're meeting all of those expectations, let's focus the conversation towards growth. And that in turn can help build trust and subsequently help improve psychological safety when you got that trust built. We just wrapped up our first ever competency-based review cycle. So we're excited to see some of the results of that. So more to come there. I don't have any data to share there, but that's super exciting. And then we've also put out some manager training. That's, again, it's early days, but we've been able to leverage the power of AI and do some role play in a low stakes environment where you're able to have a conversation with an AI bot and really play out that scenario before you actually dive in, have the real thing, which is pretty impactful. So Those 5 things I feel has really moved us in a very positive direction.
It's a comprehensive approach. It's not a training one and done. It is, here are all of the different ways that we can provide support to you and make it easy to implement from a behavior change perspective with the talking points and the one-on-one check-in agendas and things like that. You're able to really meet them where they are and give them both develop the skills and give them the tools they need to be able to do it. So again, thinking back, this all started with the employee engagement survey. How are you measuring the results of the coaching that you've implemented? How are you doing it? What did you find? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we don't have to bury the lead. I think your listeners will definitely know that, hey, we started with the engagement survey and we're going to probably see how do we know and how do we measure those results. But yeah, like you said earlier, we're trying to create an ecosystem that's no finish line. This is something that we're trying to create together. And so really one of the most valuable insights that we have from the engagement survey is measurement over time and gaining that direct evidence that what we're doing in HR has an effect and it actually matters. So in this particular situation, we just asked the same question again and compared it across time. And so comparing those survey results from the one in spring of 2024, we saw major improvements in scores related to sentiment towards leaders and then feelings around psychological safety. We saw a 19% overall increase in positive sentiment towards our leadership and a 6% overall increase in scores related to psychological safety. And this strongly indicated that our one-on-one talking point schedule, the drip campaign, our publication of competency matrices had a positive impact on the employee experience, the relationship. And it also indicated that the resources that we were providing to our leadership was helpful and helped nurture a meaningful relationship with their direct reports. And so, like you said, this is not just a journey with an end. This is an ecosystem that we're trying to create. And so if other listeners or HR leaders are out there feeling like I'm not making a difference, just keep at it. I think that's a major win that you can have, is that if you're diligent enough, you'll see the change come.
Yeah, 100%. I love that you said there's no finish line. This is all day, every day. So I know a lot of people find data a little bit intimidating. Maybe they're not sure where to start. You obviously use the employee engagement survey in this instance for data collection. But do you have any advice for leaders who might be looking at data for the first time and trying to figure out what to do, what to look at, how to measure, those kinds of things?
I think context greatly matters in how the data was gathered. How do we actually get this information? What's the validity behind it? Under what conditions was this obtained? Does this data matter? That's a big question to ask yourself. And then at the end of that, if you're having that context conversation, you want to be able to say, so what? We know this information, but what's kind of the story behind it? What story is this data telling us? You should also challenge your assumptions about what you're seeing, really remove that confirmation bias. And, I think we're all human and we're all going to have biases. And so we're going to go into it expecting one thing and we may see something else, or we may see something that confirms my hypothesis, but really trying to look at that and challenge your assumption and saying, was that 100% correct, or can the outcome be attributed to other things? And lastly, I just think bringing other people in is a really good idea, and ask other people what they're seeing, free of what your analysis might have been. And wherever you can, share the raw data with someone else and say, hey, what are you noticing? What's a pattern? That can bring validity and confirmation free of bias to what you're seeing as well. So just temporarily remove yourself from the situation, let someone else look at it, and just compare notes and see if you come to the same conclusions.
That's great advice. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about where people can find data. I know that varies a lot by organization. And for you guys, the employee engagement survey is a big piece of that. But are there places that you would advise them to look?
Totally. I think your HRIS is going to be your biggest friend here. I think you're able to create a profile based off of tenure, someone's compensation profile. When was the last time they got a promotion? Who do they report to? How often have they had a manager change? And through those things, you're able to look at some potentially predictive analytics, and can also have some triggers that say, hey, this person hasn't received praise in over 3 months. Is that something that we need to address there? And so in the end, we're all trying to attract and retain. And so if you look at it from the perspective of, how do I create an ecosystem, an environment that wants to bring people around? What are those things? What are those values that people have? And how do I provide that to them so that they want to come here and stick around? And so just put yourself in the situation and think about what makes a good experience. And then how do I know it's a good experience? And that's where the data lies.
Yeah, that's great advice. And a lot of roads do point back to retention in our world, especially. So thank you for sharing that. Wilson, I'm so glad you were able to jump on with me today and share your experiences with working with data and how that led you to a coaching program and your nonprofit. You're doing amazing work, being really thoughtful and strategic about how you're supporting staff across the organization. So thank you for giving us a little bit of insight into that today.
Excellent. Thanks, Heather. It was great to be on, and hope I can join again in the future.
Data is everywhere in your organization. And I love that Wilson was able to share how he used data to determine the right solution, but then also to verify that solution was working. It really is a cycle, and data is available to you. You just have to know where to look. So find the data, ask the questions, understand what's happening inside your organization, and be ready to show the impact of the work that you're doing. That's what this is all about. I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.
Hey friend, was this episode helpful for you? Did you like what you heard? Do you want more content like this? Here are 3 things you can do. Hit subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice, share this episode with a colleague. This means so much to me personally. I read every review, but it also helps me learn what content you like most so I can create more of what you want. All right, turn that Teams or Slack chat back on when you're ready, and I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.